spend our life searching for the sense of belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence.
Anxious Earth is rising. I'm so happy.
We spend our life searching for the sense of belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence.
Oh, hey, Double Triple channel here. Hey, welcome to the Double Triple channel. My name is Ron. I live in rural New Hampshire. I'm surrounded by forests and wild animals. This is a live stream on Twitch. It's March 8th, 2026, 11 p.m. Technically, it's 10 p.m. But we're on the daylight saving time. Just started this morning, to my surprise. Now it's 11 a.m. p.m. All right. If you're watching this on video somewhere on YouTube or whatever, yeah, this is scuff, right? This is not a edited down video. It's a live Twitch stream. So a lot of mistakes and blah blah blah, and I'm talking about a lot of stuff, and beginning of the stream I'm just bullshitting and whatever. So you gotta skip ahead through the video to find the part that you want, or whatever, however you do it. You know how that works, right? At the beginning of the stream, what I usually do is I test to make sure that my sync is all set up here properly, so my mouth and my voice and all that is all synced up. So let me give that a shot here. Adjust my. Do you see my? There's my microphone. All right. So I'm gonna check the sync here real quick. All right, we're synced up, I think. It looks like it's synced up to me. I don't know. All right, so we're all set, I think. I got my microphone. Puny microphone.
This toy has fascinated me since childhood. To me, its motion is almost hypnotic. Here's how it operates. Wet the bird's beak thoroughly with room temperature water. The opaque container makes it look chilled, but it isn't. Then stand it upright. It'll take a few seconds for it to start drinking. Notice that all of the action right now takes place in the stem here. As I speed up the action, you see liquid rising and the bird rocking back and forth. If I return to normal speed, you can see the bird slowly, very, very slowly, rock forward until it takes a drink which it will do again and again. In this video, I'll detail the bird's clever engineering design, explain how it uses thermodynamics, and link its action to some of the greatest and most impactful devices created by engineers. This toy has a long history, but its current incarnation is due to Miles V. Sullivan, a scientist at Bell Labs. He's specialized in methods of manufacturing semiconductors, but as a sideline invented toys. It's reported that this bird delighted U.S. President Herbert Hoover, an engineer who failed to figure out how it worked, and it also defeated the great scientist Albert Einstein, who spent 3.5 months studying it. It's reported that he refused to take the bird apart. With the benefit of hindsight, let's start by exploring how it works and examining the key engineering design aspects. First, let's ask, is the water ornamental or essential? At first, the bird acts just as if the water were still there. Now let's speed up the motion. You see at 15 minutes it's still drinking, at 30 minutes still drinking, 45 minutes still drinking, 60 minutes still drinking, 75 minutes still drinking, and 5 or 10 minutes later, at 8 or 85 minutes, it takes its last drink. The liquid still rises a bit, but it never rises enough to make the bird tip over, which shows that the motion is not perpetual. As long as there's water, the bird keeps drinking. Let's look inside the bird to get an idea of how it works. Underneath the bird's hat, beak, and fabric covering lies a glass bulb, smaller than the bulb at the base and also rounder. Now, watch as I put a few drops of isopropyl alcohol on the top bulb to cool it. The liquid rapidly rises to the head. This changes the bird's center of gravity so that it will tilt forward. The head now fills with liquid, and then, there, it drinks. It becomes upright, and the liquid drains from the head. Liquid rises again to the head, and the bird drinks again. This cycle repeats until all of the isopropyl alcohol on the bird's head evaporates. Why does the liquid rise? The place to begin is with the bird's manufacture. The bird is filled through this tap, a small pipe built into the head with methylene chloride dyed red, which is then frozen, a vacuum applied to evacuate the air, the tap sealed, and of course later hidden by the bird's hat. And then the methylene chloride melts. It turns to liquid, and then some of it evaporates, turns into vapor. The key to the bird's operation is that the vapor in the head and in the base are separated by the liquid in the base. It's hard to see, but a tube extends into the base, nearly reaching the bottom. This separates the vapor in the base and the vapor in the tube and, of course, the head. So at rest, the pressure in these two spaces are equal, but when the bird's beak is wet, the temperature falls, and as I'll explain in a moment, the pressure in the head drops below that in the base and the liquid rises. Of course, this liquid in the head causes the bird to tilt forward to drink, and when it drinks, the vapor in the head and the base are connected. The pressures nearly equalize. A slug of vapor rises to the top, and some liquid drains from the head, and then the cycle repeats. To see the pressure equalize, I'll slow down the bird as I tilt it forward. Right now the head is half full. When I tilt it, you see a slug of vapor go from bottom to top. I've tilted it far enough forward that the liquid in the head is below the top of the tube, and the liquid in the base is below the section of the tube that almost reaches the bottom of the bird. This allows the pressure to equalize, and as the bird becomes upright, the liquid returns to the base before the cycle starts again. In operation, it doesn't tilt quite this far forward, and so the pressures don't fully equalize. Why, though, does the pressure in the head drop as the temperature falls? You can see the answer if I shoot cool, compressed gas across the bird's head. As the cool gas strikes, you see liquid condensing inside the head. And, as you see on the left, this causes the liquid in the base to rise. The cool gas withdraws energy as heat from the head, causing some of the methylene chloride vapor inside to condense, to turn into a liquid. This decreases dramatically the amount of vapor in the head. Liquid is 1,000 times more dense than vapor. This in turn lowers the pressure in the head and causes the liquid to rise. I used compressed gas to cool the head because I can control the amount of cooling. The bird, though, cools its head by drinking. The head is wrapped in fabric that absorbs water. As I put drops on its beak, you can see the water beads up at first, then saturates the fabric and spreads rapidly across the bird's face. On the right side, you can see it creeping to the back of the head. If I now turn the bird around, You can see that the water has spread to the back. As I continue adding drops on the beak, the saturated area on the back increases. When this water evaporates into the air, it removes energy from the bulb as heat. You feel this effect every time you step out of the shower. The evaporating water withdraws energy as heat and chills you. This evaporation, this withdrawal of heat, lowers the temperature and begins the condensation of the vapor, which starts the cycle, as I showed you with a cool, compressed gas. As long as the head is wet and heat is withdrawn from it, the bird will always drink. But if you were to operate the bird in humid air, it would slow down because little water would evaporate. And if the air were at 100% humidity, the bird would stop because no water would evaporate at all. Now, to make this dramatic condensation happen, when the temperature is lowered just slightly, the evaporating water lowers the temperature by about 0.3 of a degree, the bird's designer chose a highly volatile liquid. This means one whose boiling point is near ambient temperature, because for small changes in temperature, there's a large change from vapor to liquid, and so the variation of pressure is large. Watch what happens as I heat the base of the bird with my hand. You see the liquid level in the base dropping. That's because energy from my hand is converting some of the liquid into vapor, which increases the pressure in this region. And that causes the liquid to rise to the head. Eventually, I heat the vapor so much that it shoots up the stem. Now, watch as I place my hand around the head. Heat from my hand converts liquid to vapor, which increases the pressure and forces the liquid back to the base. To test this explanation of the bird's operation, let's activate the bird in different ways. As I noted, it is the temperature difference between its top and bottom that drives liquid to rise to the head. So let's see what happens if I point a light at the base of the bird, which I've painted black so it will absorb the energy from the light better. As I heat the base of the bird, the liquid rises as before, but the bird tips backwards. The wet nose tilted the center of gravity, and so I've added some modeling clay to the nose to get the bird to tilt forward. And now, when I turn on the light, the liquid rises. The bird drinks just as if there were liquid in front of it until I turn the light off, and the bird drinks for a little bit longer until eventually it comes to rest. Next, let's see what happens if we use this whiskey. Again, thoroughly wet the bird's beak with the liquid. Stand it upright, and then we see again the liquid rising in the bird. And then it drinks. We can also now understand why the bird's rate of drinking differs among the three methods I use to activate the bird: a heat lamp, whiskey, and water. Roughly, the heat bird takes 3 drinks for every one of the water bird. The whiskey bird takes 2 for every drink of the water bird. The reason the bird drinks whiskey faster than water is because the rate of evaporation of the alcohol is greater than that of water. This means that heat is withdrawn faster from the head, and so more vapor condenses in a shorter amount of time, which accelerates the pressure difference. The heat lamp causes the greatest difference of all, which highlights how an engineer thinks about this bird. To an engineer, this bird is a heat engine. A heat engine turns heat differences into work, mechanical motion. To see that, recall that when the bird is just about to drink, that its head is at a lower temperature than its base, which is at ambient temperature. Then, when it drinks, the pressure in the head and base start to equalize, so liquid returns to the base, but the overall temperature of the bird is now just a little below ambient temperature. When it returns to upright, the base draws in energy as heat. The head then rejects some energy as heat, and the bird drinks again. These 2 flows define a heat engine, a device operating in a cycle that absorbs heat from a high-temperature reservoir, converts part of it into work, and rejects the remainder into a low-temperature reservoir. The fact that it's a heat engine means it's related to the great machines that make our globalized world happen. Among those, the mighty steam turbine that generates electricity, the giant diesel engine that propels container ships across the oceans, and the great gas turbine that flies us around the globe. I'm Bill Hammack, the Engineer Guy.
Did that fix it? Okay, that got it. All right. I think you should be able to hear it now. Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's the ceiling's fault. Yes, echoes from the ceiling. Yeah, I got the mic going. I don't know why that did that. Maybe my USB connection got there and plugged on my mic or something. Yeah, I need a new mic. I need a big mic. I just got this tiny little mic. I need a big mic if somebody could get me a big mic. Yep. Because all those streamers with thousands of viewers, they got these big mics and colors and stuff and lights and LEDs and everything. And I got this stupid little mic I got on eBay for $10. It sounds good though. It doesn't sound too bad. So whatever, it works. So that was Drinking Bird. All right. So we got Drinking Bird. Drinking Bird got drunk and cut off my audio, but now we're back. So and I have an actual Drinking Bird here. See, it's a real Drinking Bird. I tried it out earlier today, and it seems to work. It's very old. It's got rust on it and everything else. It's really an old. Old bird, old Drinking Bird. But so we're gonna mess around with that. So let me see if I can get this thing going here. I think I had it set up here. So we need water, which I conveniently have here. Okay, shoot a little jar of water. Well, the water's cold, which I guess we want, right? The bird actually in the winter stops working because the temperature gets too low in here. Right now it's about 13 degrees C, so I think that's good enough. And my water, let me check my water temperature here. Let me lower this so you can see this a little bit here. Get this crap out of the way here, and we'll lower this, and I'll focus it. Let's see here. Can you see that? Wait, let me adjust this here. There we go. There's Drinking Bird. Whoop, wait, no. I've got this goofy thing here. This goofy, it's not even really a tripod or anything. It's just one of those flexible doohickeys. And I try to adjust it, and it kind of fades here a little bit. But we'll get it. We'll get it figured out here. All right, there's Drinking Bird, right? That's good enough, huh? You see that? Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so first let me check the I'll check the temperature of the water here. Let me get his beak wet because it takes a while for him to absorb. So you saw the video, right? So his head has to get soaked. If the whole head is covered here. There we go. So we'll put his head in the water. Oh, shit. There we go. I think I need more water in there. Hang on just a second. Let me put more water in there. I don't want it too much, otherwise it'll spill all over. Hi, Min. How are you? Thank you for joining us. Silver Pills. Hey, hi. How are you? Yeah, we're doing hands-on experimental stuff here with Drinking Bird. And let me adjust my camera a little bit here. See if I can get this so you can see his beak actually getting soaked here. Can you see that? I think I need to focus it a little bit. There we go. So his nose is already soaked there. You can see that. And it's starting to get into the rest of his head there, see? So this is all felt. This is felt covering over this glass. If you saw that video, this is felt covering over the glass. And so the water, all you got to do is dip it in there a little bit, and then here, I'll dip it in a little bit more so it gets a little bit more wet. There we go. All right, so that should do it, I think. So what he didn't cover in the video there was step one, right, is why the water? Why does the water move up from gravity, right? Gravity should always pull the water down. Gravity's keeping the water in a jar here. So why, when I put the beak in there, why does the water go up against the gravity into the felt? So that's the question, right? Why does it do that? Let me look at chat here real quick. Fixed. Have you ever tried pickle juice? No, orange hue. In fact, I don't even eat pickles anymore. I found out that the salt or something in pickles can cause cancer in your stomach. So I don't eat pickles anymore. Even this is an old jar. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, I don't do that. Yeah, probably best to avoid pickled products as much as you can. And I can't avoid it completely, but I try. Bird is nodding in delight. Yeah. Let's see. Okie dokie. Yeah. I don't do that. So let's see if it's started. You can see I don't know if you can see that from that angle, but this bird is, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that now. The liquid, the methyl chloride is starting to creep up here. It's almost to the top here. It's slowly going up. Oh, I didn't check the temperature of the water. Here's the temperature of the water. 14. So the water's a little bit warmer than room temperature. Room temperature is 13 right now, 12.8. And there it goes. It's ready to drink. Whoa. There it goes. Hey, it did it. Okay. Hey, it worked. So it's going to be pretty slow because it's, it's cold in here. The water's cold and everything else. And I noticed it's not that. It's about 50. Let's see what the dew point is, or whatever the humidity in here. I've got an old thermometer here. 56 degrees or 56. I don't know if you can see that. This is two. There it is. Yeah, 56%. And 56 degrees and 56 degrees Fahrenheit and 56%. Oh, there it goes. Another drink. Doop. So that's pretty cool. So it works. That wasn't too long. That was only about a minute to get it to drink. So the first question, right? First question is, why would the water go against gravity and go up against gravity like that? And that's because of capillary action. And what capillary action does, I can put my face down here. What capillary action does is uses electromagnetic force. And almost all of this, everything in this thing is the electromagnetic force is responsible for most stuff that happens. It's gravity and electromagnetic force is responsible for most of the things that happen in ordinary, what people ordinarily experience. So the capillary action that sucks the water up into the felt of the head is from the electromagnetic force. And what happens is inside the felt. Let me see if I can get a close-up picture of the felt in the head here. Maybe I can do that, and then we can. Maybe not. Let's see here. Oh yeah, that gets pretty close, doesn't it? Look at that! Wow. I'll put the focus all the way to the max and see how close we can get, and I'll put a light on it. You see that? We probably won't be able to see microscopically what's going on there. Nah, but they're little inside the felt, right? There are little holes and little passages that the water flows through. And what happens is the electrons in the felt attract the molecules of, or the charge in the felt attracts the molecules of water. A molecule of water is a polar molecule. It means that one side of the molecule has a positive charge and the other side has a negative charge, and that's because it's of the way that the molecule is organized. Maybe I should put my little pad up here and draw some stuff, since I'm going to get into this pretty deep here. I don't know if I can do that here. So it'll take a second here, but it's drinking pretty fast rate, isn't it? I mean, when you look at it, it's going pretty good. It's, you know, for the temperature in this room here. And the guy was right. It is a heat engine. The heat is flowing from the bottom to the top, in and out. That's what's happening. But let me see if I can bring up my little drawing pad here. Sorry, let's take a second here. You can watch the bird drink while I'm doing this, I guess. Paint window. There we go. Oh, I gotta. Hang on just a second. This take a second here for me to get my paint program going. And it'll probably mess up my. No, it's not. It won't even run. Look at this. There it goes. Okay. I'm trying to get my paint thing going here. It just takes a lot of clicks and stuff to get it to work here. There we go. All right. You see that? Oh, that should be up there. My Wacom tablet now is not working. All right, forget that. Let's go to Plan B. Plan B is we go onto Wikipedia and look at the article on oh my God. Twitch. Okay. Sorry. Can you still see the little bird? No, you can't see the bird. Let me turn the bird back on again. There we go. There's the bird. Now I'm going to try to find my Wikipedia here. There we go. Okay. All right. So we'll go to Wikipedia here. Let's see. I've got an article here on Michael Fink, which we're going to talk about in a little bit when we talk about pregnant astronauts. No, he's not pregnant, but that's what made me think about pregnant astronauts. All right, so we'll go up here and we'll go to H2O. Let's see what that does. Water. And we'll see if it talks about. There it is. So there's the molecule here. You can see it, and it's polar because it says right here 104.45 degrees. The hydrogen that's just the way that it forms because of the electromagnetic forces and even the nuclear forces causes it to come into an angle like that. And because it's at an angle like that, it makes it so that there's more electrons on one side and then on the other side, which means it's going to be positive and negative. So it's a polar molecule. That's a long way of getting to the fact that water is a polar molecule. And because of that, it causes it to attract to things. So if you take water and plastic, you put plastic near like water that's dripping or something like that. You know, if you drip water next to like a comb or something that's plastic, you'll notice that it curves as it's falling because it's attracted to things, to plastic or to felt in this case, and that causes capillary action. Or that's what causes capillary action is the polar nature of the water molecule. All right, so let me go to capillary action here. And here you can see how that works. Inside the little inside any tubes of anything. It can be glass, can be plastic, anything. And this is felt. It's probably made out of plastic of some sort. But what happens is, as a molecule of water is attracted to this side of the glass here, you can see it here, that it pulls to the side of the glass, or in this case plastic. And when it gets pulled up there, then the other ones get pulled up. And then when they pull up, then this one gets closer and it pulls up. And it just continues like that. And it can actually cause water to seep up into things. Let's see, they have a picture of a brick here. Look at this. Look at this picture here. You can see that the water goes against gravity, because electromagnetic force is much stronger than the gravitational force. Gravity isn't really a force, but we'll talk about that later. But so it pulls it up, and it just keeps pulling it up and pulling it up and pulling it up. That's how the capillary action works. And there's a thing called superfluidity, which is another really cool thing that causes, if you take for example, helium. If helium is brought down to turned into a liquid, it becomes a super liquid. It becomes superfluid, and it will just flow over the surface of every single thing of the container, whatever it's in. If you let it loose in a room, every single wall and the ceiling and everything would become covered by the hydrogen, by the liquid hydrogen, because it becomes a superfluid. It's because it's so light that capillary action works even without a tube. It just kind of goes up the sides of everything. Water is heavier, so it has to be within a certain diameter tube for it to do that capillary action. So anyway, that's why drinking bird drinks. That's why the actual water gets sucked up into the felt of the thing, is because of capillary action. So that's one thing. I'm going to get into much more depth than what he was talking about. So that's capillary action. That's why that one happens. Okay. Then once it gets into and seeps into the felt, then the water the surface area of the water becomes much greater than it was when it's inside the little jar. So it's spread out all over this felt, all over the bird's head here. So the surface area to volume of the water is much higher, which means there's more surface area for it to evaporate. And evaporation happens because it's like a thermodynamic process, right? The little molecules are bouncing around always, right? Everything, right? And every single thing there is that's above absolute zero, molecules are bouncing around, right? If they're in a solid state, then they're kind of in a crystal, they're right next to each other, and they're stuck. They can wiggle around a little bit, but they can't really migrate and move very much. But when they become liquid, like here, like the water, then they can move around and they can migrate and move all over the place, but they're always touching each other. They don't come apart that much, right? Technically, in a atom, right? It never actually touches. Nothing. There isn't even anything there to touch, right? It's all waves. but they're always in contact quote unquote contact, right? The molecules. And then when the surface area becomes great, then there's more opportunity for more of the molecules to take off, to get kind of like escape velocity, right? They get moving fast enough that they no longer are in contact with each other, and they become a vapor or gas. So there's different phases, right? And so that's what's happening. These molecules are breaking free. They're getting escape velocity. Technically, that's not technically what the word is, but they move fast enough that they can take off into the air. And when that happens, that lowers the temperature of the thing, as the guy said, right? As Mark Hammond said in the video, it lowers the temperature, and that's because of the latent heat of vaporization or evaporation. And the reason there is latent heat, what latent heat is it means that you add heat to something or take heat away from something without changing temperature. That's what latent heat is. Normally, if you have something and you put energy into it, the temperature will increase. Or if you take temperature away from it, energy away from it, the temperature will decrease. But when it changes phase like that, what happens is you put heat into it, and the temperature can stay the same, but it will change phase. So that's what's happening here, is as the molecules escape, and one way of looking at that is that the average motion of the molecules that remain on the head is lower than the ones that are taking off, right? You've got a bunch of molecules, and they're all wiggling around in the water. And the ones that are wiggling the most, the temperature is the average of them all, right? Some of them are going to be hardly moving at all. Some of them are going to be moving a lot. The ones that escape are the ones that have the most energy. So the ones that are left are the ones that have less energy. So the average motion is going to be lower. So the average temperature will be lower after the energetic ones take off. So that's one way of looking at it. And that's what lowers the temperature. And so when the temperature lowers, then the the pressure will be lower up here, right? And that's what sucks this fluid up. I think Mark explained that in the video. And then what that does when that fluid, which is that room temperature down on the bottom here, when it goes up to the top, then the cooling up here, it does a couple things. One, the vapor of this methyl chloride here condenses up in the head where it's cooler, which also lowers the pressure up there. But also just the lower temperature also lowers the pressure. And then it's this down here is a higher temperature. So the higher temperature is a higher pressure. This is lower temperature. That's higher pressure. So the thing's going to move up. That's what causes it to move up. Then when it gets up to the top, it cools down. I'm even getting some condensing here off of this, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see that here. The ambient air around here, even though it's only 56% humidity, it's still some of that water is condensing on the outside of this thing, which is kind of interesting. It's dripping down in here. So it cools down, and it gets up to the top, and then it causes it to tip over. There we go. And it drinks. And you notice when it tips over like that, the angle gets far enough that the water, you see what happens, right? There's like a bubble that forms down in the bottom, and then it flows up, and then breaks the seal here between these two things, and then it allows that water to flow down. All right, let me check chat here and see if there's any questions or anything. Drinky, Mr. Drinky. Yeah, his name is Carl. Is that his real name? Is that a real thing? I didn't look up the history of the thing to see what there's a whole history behind the thing. That Mark guy talked about a little bit about the patent and all that, but gravity pull. Yeah, it's I'll talk about that a little bit. It's gravity's not a force, it's a curvature of space-time. So we can kind of explain it that way. Min says, "Oh, that's why it's thermodynamics." Yeah, it's entropy is the general term, because it's not just the temperature that's flowing, the heat that's flowing. It's also the humidity, right? The phase change and all that. The molecules are leaving, becoming less dense. I says, no, I just picked a random name. Oh, okay. I thought there was some real name for that's behind the thing. Yeah, he talked about different people who looked at it. He talked about Einstein and everything, trying to examine the thing. So it's quite fascinating, really. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna get this adjusted here a little bit. I don't think it's still a little out of focus. Is that better? No. That's out of focus. That's a little bit better. A little bit better. Yeah, I think that's pretty good there. Yeah. So why does it tip over, right? It has something to do with gravity, right? Drinking bird wouldn't work in space where there's zero gravity. It's got to have the gravity. It uses gravity. So it's a lever, and I don't know if he explained that. It shifts from being a lever. Oh, you can see the condensation here on the bottom. See that on the bottom there? That little drip on the bottom here? That's condensation from the thing. It's getting all over my book here. My old full physics book. So the reason it tips over, it's a lever, right? It's a lever, and it's like a seesaw, right? The way seesaws work is that whatever is heavier, whichever end is heavier, that's the side that goes down, and the other side goes up, which is just intuitive. It's just common sense, right? It's what we experience. But there's a reason for that. Now, when I was getting ready to do this stream, I asked AI for a nice explanation about that, because I was having trouble formulating it myself and trying to figure out a way to explain that. And there's the reason that everything is moves down from our perspective is because of curvature of space-time. But what's actually happening is right now, this entire mechanism is accelerating upward from the perspective of the space-time that's around it. And everything is. Everybody on the surface of Earth, everything is accelerating upward through space-time, because space-time is curved, and that's the way it works out. And everything accelerates on the surface of the Earth at approximately 9.81 meters per second squared. That's the rate of acceleration. Quick question. Yes, Min. Sure. Anytime. Yes. Any questions are welcome. So the question is, everything accelerates at the same rate, no matter what it weighs. It's out of topic. That's okay. I need to be distracted. That's all right. So everything accelerates at the same rate. So why would this thing, if no matter what, if everything accelerates at the same rate, why would the heavy end go down more than the light end, right? If everything falls at the same rate, why does that happen? And I asked AI to explain that purely in terms of curved space-time. Well, let's see. I think AutoMod did something here. Hang on just a second. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Let me deny that one. All right. Quick questions. I'll take. Okay, perfectly balanced design. Yes, I can adjust this. In fact, you have to adjust it. There are two adjustments that you can do, or a couple adjustments that you can do on this thing. One is this. Can you see that? See how this? I can pull this right out of here. This little piece of metal here is. You can adjust it so that you can bend it. You see, like this, so that most of the weight is forward of this thing. See that? So I can bend this thing back, like this, back and forth. So that's one adjustment. The other adjustment is that this whole mechanism can slide up and down this tube here. So you can adjust it to make it balanced, and also this little groove here that this thing rides on is tapered a little bit, or it's slanted back, which kind of tends to make it fall this way, and rather than like when he was messing around with it there, it fell backwards this way. But you can adjust all those things so that it falls forward all the time. So you have to adjust things to get it balanced. It's not perfectly balanced, just on its own. You got to adjust things. So I asked AI. I said, how could you explain that with curved space time? That a fulcrum like that, or a seesaw or whatever, will fall. The heavier end falls more because everything falls at the same speed. Everything in this curved space-time around Earth is going to fall at the same rate. So why does the one end go down? The heavier end fall down more than the light end. It's common sense, right? Right. But if you try to explain it with space-time, it's not as clear why that happens. And the AI gave me an answer that I thought was wrong, because the AI said that it was because the mass. I just gave it an example of a seesaw, right? You got a seesaw, you got a heavy person on one end, a light person on the other, and the heavy person goes down. And so the AI said, well, it's because the curvature, there's the curvature of space-time around Earth, but then the mass, there's curved space-time around the masses on the seesaw. And the curvature of space-time is a little bit more, on the heavy one than the light one. And I don't think that's exactly right. I think it's because of in order to get, if everything has to fall at the same rate, 9.81 meters per second squared, and in order to accelerate something that has more mass to that acceleration, that rate of acceleration requires more force, right? If there's something really light and something really heavy, and you want to accelerate them to 9.81 meters per second, you're going to have to give more force to the more massive object than to lighter object. And there's a math thing to it, but we don't even need it. We don't need to get that. I don't like getting into math anyway. And my way comes broken anyway. So that's one way to look at it. If you got a seesaw, you got a heavy thing and a lighter thing, whichever is heavier or lighter. The thing that's more massive, they're both accelerating at the same rate, but the thing that's more massive requires more force in a Newtonian sense to accelerate to that rate of acceleration. But it's all because of cursed space-time. That's why it tips over. Because the mass comes up here, and the curvature of space-time around the Earth is accelerating everything, and the thing with the more mass is gonna want to seek the lower part in the curved space-time more than this thing with less mass. I don't know if that makes sense. All right, so I think that kind of explains everything. It's perfectly balanced design. Was that your question, Min? I don't know if that was your question or not, or if I answered your question, or if that was your question. Oh, what personality traits tend to fit computer science versus artificial intelligence? What personality traits tend to fit computer science versus artificial intelligence? I don't know. I don't understand the question, man. Okay, I understand what personality traits are in humans. And fit. I'm not sure what you mean by fit. You mean our fit computer science, or you mean what personality traits are of people tend to gravitate towards computer science? I don't understand the question, man. Sorry. yeah, which. So what personality traits of people tend to gravitate towards computer science or artificial intelligence or comparatively? I don't know. Or AI. Yeah, I don't know. I have a book on that. There's a book, old book called Second Self. Let me see if I've got that. I might have that out. I think I had that on the shelf here. Just a second. Hang on just a second. Be right back. Be right back. You said I can find that book. No, I can't find it right now. But it's an old book. It comes in 1980s, I think it was written. And I forget the name of the author. But it was a very, very early book that examined with that question that you're asking right there is, Silver Pill says better suited for those areas. Yeah, I don't know who's better suited. Let me see if I can find that book. I bet it's in the on Wikipedia here. Let's see. Self. All right, maybe it's not. No, it's kind of an obscure book. Yeah, I don't see it out there. You go to Google. Maybe Google has it. Book. Tender novel. No, it wasn't a novel. It was, let's see, Second Self. I hope I'm remembering the name correctly. Second Self, Computers and the Human Spirit. That might be it. Let's see if this is it here. Because it kind of gets into what you're talking about there. 2005. No, that's not it. No, I can't find it. Anyway, it was a book that was written in the 1980s, which kind of got into that question very early on when there weren't a lot of people in that business, you know, or in computer science and all that, you know. But it was when PC had just been invented, and you know, more and more people were getting into it, and it was kind of an examination of. Yeah, that's the one that I saw, Min. But that was dated 2005, and this thing was written This was written before that. This was written like 20th century. It was 1980s, I think. Maybe even the 1970s, but it's 1980s for sure. Anyway, I can't find the book. But yeah, that's a good question. Is how different personalities are attracted to different things and stuff like that. I got into computers really early, like in the late 77, 78. 78, I got my first personal computer. 77, I wrote my first program. So I was in it pretty early, and it's. Yeah, it's different now. Artificial intelligence is going to change that quite a bit, you know. I mean, it changed over time. When the first computers were only, well, the first ones were just switches, right? You had to flip switches and turn on and the data was displayed as binary with lights. That's how the first ones were, and then they got it to where you could add a keyboard, and you typed on the keyboard and it printed out on paper. You know, the output was on paper and the input was on a keyboard, and then they got CRTs, monitors that could video, so you could type on the keyboard and it would show up on the monitor on video. And so they kept improving the interface over, and then they got to where they had memory mapped videos, so you could scroll back and forth and do all this kind of stuff. And then eventually they came up with a mouse, and graphics, so that it wasn't just a command line interface. They had Windows and graphics and all that. And there was Microsoft Windows came out, and Apple came out with their OS, and so it's changed over and over. And so the people who actually used computers in the very beginning, people who used computers had that analytical brain just to use them, and then it kept going on and on and on, and as the user interface changed, and then Apple came out with their user interface, which is much more intuitive, and then artists got into it, were able to draw, and so the type of personality that got into computers changed over time. So now with artificial intelligence, it's basically it's so close to human right now. It's just like it's like talking to another person almost. It's so the type of person who gets into it is much different. And I think also like. It'll be more like people who are into psychology and things like that is probably more adapted to figuring out what's going on with AI. Because they can't figure out how it works anymore. It used to be you had a program and step by step through the program, and you could figure out exactly what was going on every step and all that in a program. And now with AI, there's no they don't know. They don't know why it comes up with the answers that it does exactly. You know, it's too hard to. You have to ask the AI what were you thinking? You know, you have to ask it. You know, and that's very much like a psychologist or something. You know, trying to figure out what's going on in somebody's brain. You know, so it's going to be that kind of thing. And very quickly here, it's going to be beyond our comprehension entirely. We won't know at all why, you know, what they're even doing or thinking or anything. We just got to hope that they will keep us around, you know, so we don't have the Terminator or whatever. All right, so anyway, that's Big Bird. I don't any more questions on Big Bird. I think I went through the whole thing on that. I don't know. Yeah, and it is a heat engine, right? The heat, it goes from, see that? So the heat goes from here to here. So it is a heat engine. There's another thing called a Stirling engine, which is another really cool heat engine. That you can get Stirling engines that work at room temperature also. But this one is, the water is still 14.2. And the room here is 12.8, so it's which it really doesn't matter with the temperature of the water as long as the water can evaporate. It doesn't really matter because the whatever the temperature is up here and down there, it equalizes once it tips over like this, and this. This bubbles are allowed to come through here, through this part here, and eventually it just the pressure equalizes between the top and the bottom when it's tipped over like that, and then when it comes back, then that's when so it doesn't matter. This water could be, you know, much warmer or much colder than the surrounding air, and it doesn't really make that much difference because it equalizes each time. All right, I think that's all we got on Drinking Bird, as far as I can remember now. So I got into. It was definitely engaging. Well, thank you, man. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different physical things that go on in the thing, right? It's gravity and all the gravity and electromagnetic, and there's a little bit of nuclear force in there when you're talking about going from solid to liquid, you know, phase changes and stuff like that. So there's a lot into it. It is quite interesting. All right. So what else do we have on the agenda today? We have talking about Iran. We get talking about pregnant astronauts. Yeah, the pregnant astronaut thing. That was kind of weird. What happened with that was, remember we had the astronaut that got sick up in space, and nobody knew why the astronaut was sick, and they weren't saying why he was sick and all that, you know. And they didn't know which astronaut it was. They were very mysterious about it. Which, and whenever there's something like that, it always piques my interest. It's like, why, you know, what's going on? Why is everybody, you know, and. So when that happened, and there was a couple weeks there where nobody knew who it was or why you know, what the medical condition was that caused them to stop. You know the story, right? They had the astronauts up in the space station, and they're supposed to be up there for 6 months, and after 5 months or close to it, they announced that there was an astronaut that got sick, and they didn't say who it was or what the illness was or what it was or anything. They were very mysterious about it, but they said that it was a medical event that required them to stop the mission early. So instead of being up there 6 months, they're all going to be up there 5 months. And the reason why that is because they can't just have one astronaut fly down, right? It's, they can't just send up an Uber up to the space station. You can't. It's it's designed so that you have multiple astronauts, and so they had to cut the whole mission, right? All the astronauts had to come down. But they didn't say what the medical condition was or whatever. And now, just recently, this guy Michael Fink, the astronaut, said, "Okay, yeah, it's me. I'm the guy who was." He says, "I'm the guy. Okay, it's me." All right, but he's not saying what the thing was. And they worded it the way they worded the thing was, they said he had a condition that required the crew to intervene to help him, and to help him with the assistance of a flight surgeon on the ground, in the ground crew. Let's see if they got that worded here. They got it here. Here it is. Medical incident. Yeah, January 7th, right? And they didn't say who it was until just recently here. So it was about a month or 6 weeks or whatever before they actually said who it was. Undisclosed medical situation that prompted NASA to shorten the mission. Incident led to cancellation of the EVA and the rollout of some solar arrays or something. It says, at a news conference, NASA administrator said that the Crew 11 would return to Earth earlier than planned due to the medical situation. And it splashed down, and they came back. Okay, a week later, within a week, they all came back. So then, week 3, 6-7 weeks later, then this Mike Fink says he revealed that he was the one who had the medical event. He said that the event required immediate attention from his crewmates, and thanks to their actions under the guidance of NASA flight surgeons, multiple, okay. I thought it was just one guy. Whoops, shit. He was able to be quickly stabilized, it says. He said that the decision to return home early was driven by desire to take advantage of advanced medical imaging not available on the space station. So that's kind of a clue, right? Of what's going on. After splashdown, he was treated at the hospital in La Jolla, and says he's doing very well. So we don't know what the thing was, but when all that happened, when they first came out and said, "Oh, astronaut has a medical condition, they're cutting things short," and all this kind of stuff, and there was lots of speculation. And one thing I thought of, and I didn't want to say at the time, I thought, well, maybe one of the astronauts got pregnant. That would cause them to have to, right? They wouldn't be able to keep staying up there. So I thought, wow, that might be what it was, but it turned out it wasn't. But that made me think, well, what happens if an astronaut gets pregnant, and how could that happen? And I know how it happens, but you know what I mean. How do they handle that? So that was something that I wanted to investigate, and I did. So I investigated it. Let's see. Min says better explanation than a high school teacher. Okay, well, yeah, better than high school, less than a professor. I don't know. I just like to get in. That drinking bird thing is just, it's pretty cool. It has all these different things that you can talk about, which is kind of interesting. All right, so I thought that was kind of interesting. How what if an astronaut gets pregnant in space? And can that be something that happens, you know. Is it possible that could, you know, the way they have it set up and everything, is that possible? And, you know, and are there any, you know, members of the 100 Mile High Club yet? You know, that's a question. Nobody knows. You think it would be something that they would want to study, right? You know, a lot of people want to go out, you know, think that we need to colonize space and go out, you know, a lot, and that would be part of it, right? Is reproducing and all that kind of stuff. So that anyway, that it just made me think about that, and the whole idea, you know, and that because that kind of fit the whole thing that was going on, right? Somebody has a medical condition, and they don't want to say what it is, and you know, because they don't want to keep privacy and blah blah blah. Well, that would fit, right? If an astronaut got pregnant, that would kind of fit that whole situation, right? They wouldn't want to say, you know, blah blah blah, right? But that wasn't what it was. So I looked into it, and it turns out that they have pre and post flight medical care. You know, they do a lot of stuff. They don't want astronauts getting sick up in space, so they do a lot of different stuff. They do all kinds of testing. They make sure they're in good physical condition and all this kind of stuff. And they test them. They do all kinds of blood tests. They do, you know, they want to make sure that they don't get sick when they're up in space as much as possible. And so they have all these different things that they do to test them before they go up into space, and then they isolate them before they go up into space to make sure that they don't get you know, infected with some disease or something. You know, they don't get COVID or whatever before they go up into space. I don't think anybody's had COVID in space yet, have they? Maybe they did. I forget. But I couldn't find any source that actually said it, but the AI said that they probably check for pregnancy in the blood tests. You know, that's probably one of the standard things they do. Oh, there was something in here about gynecological health. So there's a group up here called Women's Aerospace Network, which they had a thing in here that talked about that, because that's, you know, when women go into space, that's something that they would need to take care of. And there's all kinds of different things about you know, whether or not they're going to keep having their menstrual cycles when they're in space. And, you know, because some of them choose to take hormones to stop their menstrual cycles when they're in space, and some of them just, you know, use tampons or whatever they're, you know, normally would use. And but when they do these tests before they go up into space, they presumably, when they're doing these blood tests and stuff like that, that's one of the things they check for to see if they're pregnant or not. So it's unlikely that an astronaut would get pregnant before they get up into space, you know, before they blast off. Right?
And he and his crew at the International Space Station later returned to Earth early.
Min says you should check out the movie Space Between Us. Oh yeah, I saw that movie. If that's the one I'm thinking of, where they have a woman gets pregnant and gives birth to a baby on Mars. Is the first one who has a baby on Mars, and they keep it a secret for some reason. You know, for plot device, I guess they keep it secret. I guess I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to spoil that. But yeah, that's a good movie. I guess I recommend that. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Since I saw it, so
now you can decide how biggy you want to go.
But that's basically the deal. And there's a love story and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a good movie.
More biggie options, so you can get more of what
but
you really want.
Yeah, that kind of ties into what we're talking about. That was the first person to be born on Mars, according in that sci-fi. it's unlikely that an astronaut is going to get pregnant before they go up into space, right? Because they're testing and stuff like that. It would have to be, the timing would have to be very, very close. And they're professional. They probably abstain or whatever before they go, just to make sure or whatever.
Now to the war in Iran and breaking tragic news as a 7th U.S.
But there is discussion about. I should probably set the settings on my thing here, right? If we're going to start talking about sex and space, maybe I should put this as adults only. How do I do that? Is there something I got to change here to do that? Anybody know anything about that?
President Trump is warning any new
I
Iranian
think there's some
leader
settings I
will
have to do that. Let me see here.
The U.S. and Israel launched a new
Content classification. There we go. Let's see.
Hit the
Do
country's
they have something
oil
for that?
refineries. Iran's foreign ministry
Drugs?
says the attacks amount
No.
to chemical
We talked
warfare
about
against
drugs
the
earlier.
Iranian citizens, vowing that they will
Let's see.
continue to
Gambling?
fight.
No, gambling is kind of like
Retaliated,
gambling.
launching strikes in several Gulf
It's
countries,
right,
including
taking
Saudi
a gamble.
Arabia, where
If you have
2
sex
people
before you
were
go
killed.
into space, unprotected space, that's a gamble. No, let's see. Mature rated games, profanity and vulgarity, all the time here. Let's see. Sexual themes, that's what I'll click that. All right, there we go. Did I do
1
that?
second you're
Sexual
tucking them
themes,
in.
okay.
The next, your heart's racing.
The police are on their way.
Until you
I
remember,
clicked it, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to
You're
do after I
protected.
click it. Ah, jeez. This is 100%, 90%. Yeah, I clicked it, but for some reason it's not letting me go here. Did that work? Did it give me did it put a warning up there? Jesus.
The LA Marathon ended
This is
in
incredible.
incredible fashion.
Edited content.
26.2 miles, and it all came down to a photo finish
goodness.
ending
There it is,
in
okay.
dramatic fashion.
The little
winner
button there was hidden
needing every
off
inch
the bottom of
of
my
those
screen.
26.2
Okay, the
miles.
voice is
Take a look at
overlapped.
this. American Nathan Martin overtook
The voice
Kenya's
is over.
Michael
Oh, can you
Kamo
hear
in
that
the
voice
final
in the next
stretch to
room?
win by 1/100th of
Is
a
that the
second.
problem?
Martin surged ahead as Kamo collapsed at the finish line and was tended to.
I
by
can hear
medics.
it, but I
goes
didn't know my
down
mic
as
was
the
picking up.
closest
Let me go
LA
turn that
marathon
down. Hang on
finish
just a second.
in history.
Yeah, it was a Hollywood.
Oh, let me
effort,
check
but
my
for
sync
many
since
of
I'm
the
walking back there.
27,000 participants in today's marathon, it was simply about the journey. Eyewitness News reporter Dominic Newland has more.
It was off to the races for the thousands of runners participating in this year's A6 Los Angeles Marathon. The city welcoming 36,000 runners throughout the week and 27,000 stepping off this
Okay, I heard what you were talking about. One of these
are taking on run clubs. They're enjoying running content on
one of
social
these
media.
panels
We're
I
seeing a huge surge
picked
in
up here is
participation
trying to
from
play
those
a
young
video.
folks.
So let me see if I
Races
can
are
find
selling out
that here.
across the country, our event included.
And these runners off to my left, they started at Dodger Stadium, then
was that
making
one
their
it?
way
No.
to Century City, a little over 26 miles with a tour of LA. The tour including famous landmarks like a stop across the Oscars red carpet.
It's so cool. We actually didn't know that we were on the Walk of Fame until we came out onto the sidewalk and we were like,
They got these
"Wait a
damn
second, this is so
websites.
cool."
All you do is you just
Whether
go to
you're a
their
seasoned
website and it
marathoner
starts
or
playing
a
all kinds of
first-time
ads or
runner,
who knows
the LA
what.
Marathon,
Okay, here's something that's
hosted by the
playing.
McCourt Foundation, offers experiences.
Let me stop that. There we go. All right, that should fix it. All right, it was this site here. These are the guys to blame. It's always old media. Old media, they just, their websites are always so crappy. They always have all kinds of pop-ups and bullshit that come up, and so I don't know, and you try to, here's the ad, right? Here's the video. You say, I don't want to look at that. So you scroll down, and then they make it pop up again, and all right. So let me get rid of that. Let's leave that website completely. All right. So, where was I? Okay, so we got rid of that guy talking in the background. All right, here's this website here, women's Aerospace Network. I don't know if they're still around because I try going to their to this part here, and it tells me there's a problem with the website or something. They can't get to it, so they got an issue with their website here for some reason. So I don't know how, if this has been around a long time, or if they're still around, or if this is kind of just an artifact website, one of those abandoned websites that just kind of keeps going. I don't know what's going on, but it's pretty cool. They talk about all different stuff. Women astronauts, right? They got their own little organization here to help them out and talk about stuff that women have to deal with when they go up into space. There was also one of these things was talking about the qualifications or whatever for women. Let's see if I can find that here. Reject, yeah, reject. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's see, sex and space. Here it is, waivered health conditions. So they got all these different. It turns out that the astronauts can take medication if they certain medications that they can take. They can wear glasses, right? They don't have to have perfect vision, and as long as their vision can be corrected with glasses, and they have all these disqualifying conditions. Health disorder general. I don't know what. That's just a catch-all. I guess if they want to get somebody out for some reason, then they can use that. I guess certain disorders, hearing. Right? They got to have good hearing. They have to have good eyesight, or at least eyesight that can be corrected to 20/20 with glasses. They can't be psycho. They can't. Digestive orders. They don't. That's apparently a problem. So anyway, cardiovascular. That's really important. And then they have a bunch of stuff that can be conditions that can be allowed. Heart murmurs or whatever, that kind of thing is okay under certain conditions. And anyway, they got all this different stuff here. That they, and they screen them. And that's the general stuff. And then they do these tests right before they go up into space to make sure that they haven't caught any diseases or anything. And presumably, when they're doing the blood tests, they'll catch to see if an astronaut is pregnant or not before they go up there. But they can get pregnant in space, right? I asked the AI about that. Let me find that. That's kind of an interesting conversation I had with AI. Let me bring that up here because it's kind of funny. I had this big long conversation because AI, of course, would know nothing. Right? If you're trying to figure out, AI obviously has no experience with sex. All it knows is what it reads about and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny talking to the AI about all this stuff. Let me see here. So I had all these different conversations with the AI. Let's see, spade. Where did I have that in here? Let's see, job growth, seesaw. Oh, that was my seesaw, my space-time thing. Let's see, transition, atmosphere. What happened to the? Oh, there it is. Here it is. Ephemeral. Oh shit! Hang on just a second here. I gotta. It's not working now. Let me reload the whole page here. Well, my AI, it did this before. My AI is broken now for some reason. It's probably Iran hacking us or something. Did you know they attacked an Amazon data center, a couple data centers in where was it, on the Arabian Peninsula or somewhere? They attacked a couple Amazon data centers. So maybe that's why I'm having trouble with this thing today. Anyway, but I asked the AI about it. I was asking the AI about sex. How could an astronaut get pregnant in space, right? Just for fun. I like to run stuff by the AI before I talk about it, if I can. And so I was asking the AI about it, and it said, "No, it can't happen. Right? They can't get pregnant." I said, "Well, what happens if they get pregnant before they go up?" And they explained, they do all these pre-flight stuff, and so that would be rare for that to happen, right? That's probably not going to happen before going up, but they could get pregnant up in space. And I asked the AI, I said, well, can't they get pregnant in space? And the AI said no, and I kept asking, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it kept coming up with these things. It said, well, there's no privacy right up there, but there is. They could figure it out, right? And the other crew members can just look the other way or whatever, go somewhere else in the space station, give them their privacy, right? So that and they know how to adjust the cameras and stuff, right? They figure that out pretty quickly, how they can adjust the cameras to have their privacy up there. So that could happen. And then they said, well, and then there was one part where the AI said, well, they need special equipment. Special, because it's zero G. They need special equipment in order to have sex in space, which I thought was just it's silly. You don't need special equipment. Yeah, let's see. Min says thoughts on ACI, human computer interaction. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second, Min. Let's see. Silver Pill says they literally have nothing but space. Yeah, yes, it's space. Yeah, the other is space. And the space station is huge. People think it's all you see when you see pictures of the space station, it's always just one little compartment because that's how it's put together, right? It's compartments that had to be able to fit in the back of the space shuttle, right? But it's huge. The whole thing is huge. They got all kinds of stuff all over the place, and I think they can have one of these articles I was reading about it said they could put 2 astronauts in one sleeping bag, because they sleep in these sleeping bags, right? Because it's kind of weird to try to fall asleep. They have these sleeping bags because if they just tried to sleep just floating around, it's just too weird, to just have your arms floating around to sleep that way. So they like to, it makes it easier for them to sleep to go inside these little bags and kind of fall asleep that way. Silver Pill says those folks are smart. They can design a 2-person suit and go out for a spacewalk. Yeah, I don't know about that. I guess they could. Yeah, if they wanted to, they could design a space suit and go outside. I don't know. But they don't need to do that. And then one article was talking about using Velcro, right? Because when you're in space, every action has a reaction, right? So when you push, so if they try to have sex, they're going to push each other away from each other, right? But yeah, there's ways to get around it. They have Velcro they can hang on to. And then there was another article where they talked about, well, they could have another astronaut hold two or three or four astronauts get involved in it, so that they can hold them in place. So, Silverfield says, NASA's in on it. It's an experiment. Yeah. Yeah, but what's weird is that they haven't actually... NASA is kind of avoiding the whole thing. These articles that I was looking at... Let's see here. Here's one from Mashable.com. Docking maneuvers aren't just hard for spaceships. So they had a whole article, about it, and there's a whole problem about erections. Are erections possible in space? Yes, they are. They figured that out right away, right? Because of blood flow and all that kind of stuff. And I guess it turns out that the environment actually makes it easier, or makes erections more, or something. It's like space Viagra, they call it. So that's not a problem. So, and then there's one article here where they're talking about, where is it here? Can astronauts masturbate in space? And it turns out they have. Let's see. Oh, this is Vice. So I don't know if this is true. This is from Vice. So I don't know how accurate this one is, but they were saying that a Russian astronaut had, was very frank about it and said, yeah, they do that in space. So it's possible that they've already, they're already members of the Mile High Club, or 100 Mile High Club. It's, there may be members. I remember years ago there was a space shuttle mission, and I was, for whatever reason, I had time or whatever, and I was watching, the full coverage of the thing, and it was back in the days when they where they were covering like almost every second of the mission, everything, it was a big deal, right? Still, and I remember there was a couple up in space. It happened to be a man and a woman who seemed to have very good chemistry, very, very good chemistry, Even me with my social dyslexia could figure out what was going on there, that they had good chemistry between them two. So I thought, yeah, they could have been the first members even, Silver Pill says, surely some giant elastic bands would help. Oh yeah, there are lots of different things. There's ways you could do it. Docking means an entirely different thing, though, in some communities. Yeah. Yeah, and it could have happened even when they first did it. It was all men astronauts, and I think Russia did, or Soviet Union did, had women astronauts before U.S. and then U.S. had women astronauts, but even all men, right? You could still have sex, right? It doesn't have to be a man and a woman; it could be men. Pregnancy, of course, it'd have to be a man and a woman. But anyway, I was talking to the AI about that, and it was just saying these really stupid things, special equipment, and that it couldn't happen, not enough privacy, blah blah. It just kept saying that it wasn't going to happen, and the reason why the AI was so confused about it and didn't have that much, was saying weird things about it, is because NASA hasn't said anything about it. NASA is not talking about it. They haven't really studied it, or anything. I guess they've done some animal studies. I don't know. But they haven't done anything, about it, which is really weird. You'd think that's something that they would have to, they'd have an interest in, because they got to, if we're going to be colonizing space, it's got to be figured out. They got to know what how to, we got to be able to reproduce. If we're going to if the species is going to be, leave the planet, we got to figure that out. That's something we got to, do it. Let's see here. Here's one from, this is Mashable. I think I already talked this one, didn't I? Does space romance make NASA cringe? It's complicated. Why intimate relationships among crew could be bad or good. Oh, this one kind of gets into is more broad than just sex in space. It's all kinds of different, close relationships and and all that kind of the psychological part of it, which is a whole nother aspect of it, right? It's there was like a husband and wife that went up on one mission. Early on, the topic of sex may have been raised, and the thought was just, here's NASA saying that really is not our purview. I think that gradually evolved to the question of what kind of relationships can form, and strong relationships could lead to more romantic relationships, and it's kind of like, work, or it's relationship at work or anything, or in the military, or any kind of thing where you got people working together for long periods and close quarters and that kind of thing. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, and the whole thing that made me think about that was this astronaut medical condition. It turned out it wasn't an astronaut being pregnant. It was this guy who Michael Fink here, who had a condition. We don't know what it was though, and it makes you think that, well, why, if it was just a heart murmur or something like that, or what they call thrombosis. There's a thrombosis, I guess, is a problem, which could cause like a blood clot to go up into your lungs or heart or whatever. But if it was something like that, you would think that they want their privacy, I guess. But it makes you, the fact that they're keeping it private makes you think, okay, it must be something embarrassing or something, that that you wouldn't want to talk about. And you can think about all the right things that have to do with different parts of the body that people were private about and stuff like that. So we don't know though, and we probably should speculate. I thought about it. What's most likely. And there are certain conditions. The guy's 58 years old, so it could be a lot of reasons why I guess you might want to keep it private. His whole career has been in NASA and Air Force and all that kind of stuff. So, if he had some condition that might not, prejudice people against him being able to fly planes anymore. Maybe you wouldn't want that to get out. I don't know. It's a lot of different reasons, I guess, why they'd want to keep it private, or it could just be an embarrassing thing that happened. Some part of his, stuff that people don't. I remember when years and years and years ago. When Jimmy Carter was president, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember him. Jimmy Carter, he was a president we had in the United States, and he had hemorrhoids, and they tried to keep it private, but of course it wasn't. It was on Saturday Night Live. They did a skit about it and everything else, about the president having hemorrhoids and everything. It was pretty funny. So. President, I guess they think, well, okay, it's the president. He's got his finger on the button. We got to know stuff, right? We got to know when he's sick or whatever. Our current presidents, they don't, he's trying to keep his stuff secret, and we just get lies and everything else. But he's got some pretty serious medical issues too. So maybe even some embarrassing ones. Let's see. I was born during Reagan. Oh, okay. So you get the next guy, Reagan. Yeah. Yeah, Carter was before Reagan. It was Nixon, and then Nixon had to resign, and Ford became president. And of course, the whole country was against them. The whole thing. And Ford pardoned Nixon. People hated Nixon, so they hated Ford for pardoning Nixon. And so he tried to run again. They said, "No, you pardon Nixon, we don't want you." And so they elected Carter instead. And then Carter got hemorrhoids. Carter was a nuclear physicist or nuclear engineer or something like that. Which is kind of interesting how he got to be president, But he was very hands-on, and it was even like a criticism of him that he was so technical and into the details of everything. It was kind of funny, and that's when the Iranian Revolution happened. We had the whole oil embargo, or Arab embargo on oil, and the gas crisis here in the U.S. The gas prices went very high, and then they had to ration gasoline and have you could only get gas on certain days and all this kind of stuff. And then they had the revolution in Iran, and the Ayatollah Khomeini became the leader of Iran. That was in 78, 9, something like that. And then and they took hostages when the revolution happened. They took hostages. They've probably been talking about this on the media. I don't watch mainstream media anymore. I avoid all that stuff now. They've probably been talking about this a little bit because of what's going on with Iran. But they had a revolution, and they got rid of the Shah, and it was kind of, to do the revolution, they kind of made it, they had it, kind of religious, because that helped them get the revolution, to get people motivated. They use religion. So the beginning of the thing was was highly religious, very much about religion. And then, and when they did the revolution, it was kind of a sudden thing, and they got into the American embassy and took a bunch of American hostages. I can't remember how many it was, 100 or something. I don't know how many it was. So that was like a big deal. It was in the news. It was every day. It was on the news. This entire program called Nightline on ABC was started by that. They had every night they did a special program about the hostage situation, and that kind of evolved into this thing called Nightline, the program called Nightline. And it was like over a year that they were hostage, and it was always in the news. Anyway, Carter wanted to get the hostages out, so they did a plan where they would try to do special forces would go in and rescue the hostages. And I don't know if it was the Marines or the Special Forces, whoever it was, they botched the whole thing up, and they weren't able to do it. And I think even maybe some service members died even in the thing. I forget. I don't remember the details now. But Carter got the blame for that. It wasn't his fault, right? He's the president, right? He tells the military, do your thing, do this mission, and they messed up. But he got the blame for it just because he was president. But mostly it was because he was not a sycophant to the oil industry. He was very much not one of those that would just let the oil industry do what they wanted and stuff like that. Plus it was economics, a whole bunch of things. Anyway, so he lost when he tried to get reelected, and Reagan got in instead. So that's how Reagan got in. And then Reagan was kind of popular. He was one of those. He was able to talk. He was one of those, the great communicator, they call it, great communicator, right? So that's about the only thing he has in common with Trump. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, right? Otherwise, total opposite from Trump. He's a Republican. I don't think Trump is a Republican, but Reagan was a Republican, and he was good at communicating, and he talked about lower taxes and all kinds of stuff. So it made him popular among certain groups, enough that he could get reelected again. Silver Pill says he was an actor. Yeah, he knew how to work on it. Oh yeah. And he what's interesting is that he used to be a Democrat. I mean, he started out as a Democrat. And yeah, he was an actor, and he did this movie called Bedtime for Bonzo with a chimpanzee, which is this. First of all, it was actual real live chimpanzee in the movie. They don't do that anymore, And it was Bedtime for Bonzo, and he was one of the actors in that movie. It was pretty funny, and he was a Democrat, and then the way he got into politics is he, as an actor, he was very much into unions and the actor union and all that kind of stuff, and he ended up becoming the president of the actors union. I don't know if it was SAG or if it was some other. I don't know what unit it was back then, but he became the president of that actor union, and that's what kind of got him involved in politics. And then he became governor of California. I remember that. And then he became president. So, and it was his acting. He used his acting talents to do all of that. And he wasn't just a showman. That wasn't all he was. He was smart. He was really, really smart. He was well read. He understood. He was a smart guy. He knew his stuff, but his politics were I don't know. I wouldn't say conservative, but he was Republican, So he had, lower taxes and all that kind of stuff. And then his wife, Nancy Reagan, was somewhat of a eccentric. I guess you call it. That's a polite term. I don't know. She was into astrology and all kinds of unusual stuff. So that was kind of weird too. But he eventually, he got involved. What did he have? The Iran again, right? The Iran Contra controversy. What the heck? I can't remember the details of that now. What were they doing? They were doing something. They were getting weapons to the Contras by selling oil. I can't remember what it was. They sold oil to Iran, or I can't remember what it was. Somehow the Iran and the Contras were meant like contra-revolutionary. It's sort of short for contra-revolutionary. It was Nicaragua is where the revolution was, but they also had El Salvador was kind of involved in moving weapons, but the Contras were the ones who were fighting against the communist revolution in Central America. And I'm going to look that up because I forget that now exactly how that worked out. I'm going to look that up. Okay, we're off script now. Let me look that up. I don't know if they're talking about that in main. They're probably not talking about this one. Iran-Contra affair. Maybe they're talking about that. All right, here we go. Wait, let me scan this really quick and make sure it's twitchable here. You never know. These things. Let's see here. Well, God, this is a big long article. Look at this thing. Holy moly. Let's just take a second for me to scan this thing. Yeah, there's the guy, Ollie North. Remember him? It was a big scandal, but Reagan came out of it unscathed, so, or maybe scathed, but not scathed enough that he's still able to be president and all that. All right, so here it is. Okay, it was a political scandal in the U.S. centered on arms trafficking to Iran. Oh, wait, is that right? Oh, okay. Arms trafficking to Iran between 81 and 86, facilitated by senior officials of the Reagan administration. Okay, the administration hoped to use the proceeds of the arms sale to fund the Contras. Oh, okay. I thought they were sending arms to the Contras. Okay. An anti-Sandinista rebel group in Nicaragua. Under the Boland Amendments, series of laws passed by Congress and signed by Ronald Reagan, further funding of the Contras by legislative appropriations was prohibited by Congress, but the Reagan administration continued funding them secretly using non-appropriated funds. So that was the scandal. Okay, so they were, this Ollie North was, I don't know, he was a spook or something. I don't know what he was. He was in the CIA or something. I forget what his deal was, but he was kind of running this whole project in the background there. Because that's what it was. It was the idea they wanted to get money to the Contras. I thought they were sending arms to them, but it's kind of weird that they would. Why would they sell arms to Iran to get money to give to the Contras? Then the Contras are just going to buy arms again. So that's kind of weird. I don't understand what was going on there. Let's see. The administration's justification for the arms shipments was that they were part of an attempt to free 7 U.S. hostages being held in Lebanon by Hezbollah, who they say is connected to Iran. The idea to exchange arms for hostages was proposed by some guy whose name I can't pronounce, an expatriate Iranian arms dealer. Yeah, I guess so. You would want to do that, right? Some within the Reagan administration hoped the sales would influence Iran to get Hezbollah to release the hostages. Huh. All right, so that's what Iran-Contra was. So that was a big deal at the time. Let's see. Silver Pills said, yeah, he ran on conservative values. Right. Yeah, he was. That's kind of what they do. Republicans kind of have to do that. They play to their, especially during the primaries, right? They go to the right. They try to do a lot of, look like they're more conservative or more religious or whatever. And then during the general election, they try to be more middle of the road or whatever. But yeah, that was his deal, was to be conservative. And that's back then. Republicans were very much free market. Let businesses do whatever they want to do, and they were very much religious. No abortion. That kind of thing. And he was religious. Not most people were back then. The majority of people were religious. It was like the polls, I think, was like 90% of people believed in God. It was a very religious time back then, 80s. We have first-time chatter, Cat Corraller. Good day. Yep, very Trump-coded. I thank you for stopping by, Cat. Silver Pill says he played to his audience. Yeah, well, they all do, right? Yeah, they all do. But he didn't lie so much, you know. He didn't like lie all the time. And also, if somebody lied back then, if anything about anything, if a politician lied about something and they got caught, it was a big deal, you know. There was one guy, God, I can't remember his name now. He was a Democrat who was running, and he was having an affair with his wife, and they had a picture of him with a woman sitting on his lap or something. And when they published that picture, that killed his whole campaign. He wasn't able to run anymore. He had to drop out of politics. Gary Hart was the guy's name. Yeah, and it was around the same time. He was having an affair, and they had a picture of a woman sitting on his lap, and that was it. They published that picture, and his whole political career was done. And now we got a guy in office who's cheating on his wife with a porn star and talking about grabbing women's pussies and doing all these horrible things. He digitally raped a woman in a dressing room. Okay, and that's just a little bit of what this guy did. He committed treason. He asked the Russians to interfere in the election. I mean, why? It's like night and day. All right, okay. They're both Republican. Reagan is and Trump are both have an R next to their name, and that's about it, you know. And they're good talkers, you know. But otherwise, they're night and day. So Reagan was sundowning. I don't know what that means. Sundowning then, just like Trump is now, including messing with Iran. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Iran-Contra thing. Yeah, we're talking about that. Yeah, so he had that thing going in the background. And it was weird when he finally got caught and all that kind of stuff. The way he wiggled out of that, it was like he said, "Oh, you know, in my mind, it didn't seem illegal," or it was the way he worded. Let me see if they have that here in the Wikipedia article. How he wiggled out of that. Let's see here. Arms failure, subsequent deadline, discovery and scandal, Tower Commission, aftermath, indictments, pardons. Oh, look at this. Discovery and scandal. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Appeared on national television from the Oval Office. It says, "My purpose was something," so I don't know what, something in there, "to send a signal that the United States was prepared to replace the animosity between the U.S. and Iran with a new relationship. At the same time we undertook this initiative, we made clear that Iran must oppose all forms of international terrorism as a condition of progress in our relationship. The most significant step which Iran could take, we indicated, would be to use its influence in Lebanon to secure the release of hostages." Okay, that's not the part that I was thinking. Yeah, I don't remember what. But he came on national TV and said, like, "Yeah, I did this, but it didn't seem bad at the time," or something. You know, it was like, let's see, here it is. Oh, here it is. Okay. "The reason I haven't spoken to you before now is this. You deserve the truth. And as frustrating as the waiting has been, I felt it was improper to come to you with sketchy reports or possibly even erroneous statements, which would then have to be corrected." All right. So let's see. Let me say I take full response. That's what it was. Yeah, he took full responsibility for it. That was something, which was kind of weird. He took full responsibility. This is what was so weird about it. He says, "Yeah, I take full responsibility for this," and that was it. And nothing happened to him. You know, it was like, what? Wait, what? You know. He says, let me take full responsibility for my own actions and for those of my administration, as angry as I may be about the activities undertaken without my knowledge. Oh, okay. So he pretended like he was ignorant. I'm still accountable for those activities. As disappointed as I may be in someone who served me, I'm still the one who must answer to the American people for this behavior. And he says, a few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. Here it is. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true. But the facts and the evidence tell me it's not. As the Tower Board reported, what began as a strategic opening to Iran deteriorated in its implementation into trading arms for hostages. This runs counter to my own beliefs, to administration policy, and to the original strategy we had in mind. So that was, yeah, and it was kind of weird because when you know, they had the revolution in the 70s there, and then with Carter, and Carter tried to rescue him, you know, with that botched campaign to try to rescue the hostages, and then what happened was Carter, in the transition between when, you know, after Reagan got elected and then got inaugurated, they released the hostages like right after Reagan got inaugurated. So it was like they didn't, the Iranians didn't want Carter to get the credit for the hostages being released. They wanted to do it under the Reagan administration, but right, it had to be negotiated, right? Right, there had to be, this whole thing had to be negotiated and set up and all that kind of stuff. And it was just kind of like set up so that Carter would not get the credit for the thing, even though he probably was, you know, doing a negotiation and all that. Said, okay, you know, all right, we'll release the hostages, but we'll do it, you know, under a Republican. So, you know, but they got the hostages. That was the main thing, right? And for a long time there, weirdly, the Republicans were like close to Iran, and Iran was almost kind of like a shadow ally or something of the U.S. You know, they would like, you know, on the surface they would say all these things. Oh, you know, Iran would say, oh, evil America, death to America, and all this kind of stuff. And American politicians would say, oh, those wacky, you know, Iranians are terrible, and they're, you know, blah, 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 whatever. But underneath, you know, when stuff had to happen, the Iranians would kind of do what would help us out, you know, help out the U.S., you know, especially the Republicans. So it was a weird thing. It was like that for a long time. So let me check chat here. Catcrawler says, like it's a phenomenon with dementia, particularly Alzheimer's. Yeah, he at the end there, he deteriorated while he was in office. Yeah, he got Alzheimer's and was starting to deteriorate. He also had an operation, which was really weird, and I wonder if that had something to do with his condition. He had some sort of, somebody tried to kill him, and he got shot actually in the side or in the stomach or something. Had to go to the hospital and everything. And then it was Mark Hinckley. Mark Hinckley was the guy who shot him with a pistol. And so he had to go to the hospital. And then there was some complication, which I don't know if it was related to that or not, but he had to have surgery on his brain. And he ended up having half his head was shaved. There's a picture of him out there somewhere where half his head is shaved. It's pretty funny looking. And I wonder if that had to do with him later having dementia. It may have just been just regular Alzheimer's. I don't know. Let's see. Kat says the Reagan quote makes my head start playing Reagan by Killer Mike. I don't know that one. That's a little bit after my time, I think. Saggy Nard says, good evening. Good evening, Saggy. Welcome to chat. Kat says, Ronald Reagan was an actor, just an employee of the country's real masters. Yeah, I suppose. You got the sense when you listen to him that he believed what he was saying, you know? A lot of stuff. I don't really know. I'm a lot more savvy than I used to be, you know, on that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I wasn't a big supporter of him, you know, at all. So, Kat says, country. Okay, yeah. Kat says, yeah, that assassin story is peculiar. Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, Mark Hinckley, he had a crush on what's her name, the actress from the movie Contact. I forget her name right now. He did, but also was an actor. Yeah, he was an actor, and that's why they called him the great communicator. You know, he's able to do stuff. Trump was an actor. Well, technically, yeah. I mean, he was. It wasn't really his profession. He wasn't he wasn't good at it or whatever. You know, he didn't try to make a career out of it. Trump just kind of did almost like cameos or whatever in a few films, and he did that NBC TV show, which was kind of pseudo reality show, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. Kat says, evening, Saggy. Yeah, Trump is Reagan in the new era. There really is. There's no comparison between, other than to say that they're both Republican, and they're both have the talk, right? They can do the talk. Other than that, there's no comparison between the two of them. WWE and Apprentice, yeah. Oh, I didn't know about WWE. I don't know what that is. So yeah, I don't listen to him anymore. I turn the channel, you know, whenever if I'm watching something and they start playing Trump or whatever, I turn the channel or I mute it or whatever. Or if I'm watching a video, I skip over it, that part, you know, or whatever it is. I don't listen to a word he says at all. Every once in a while, something, you know, this stuff comes through. You know, if he says something, somebody will report what he said or whatever, and, you know, I learn about it that way. But I don't like this whole thing, these speeches that he's been given. You know, he started this illegal war with Iran, and, you know, has been given speeches. I haven't listened to any of those speeches at all. Nothing that he has said. I haven't heard any of it. I just all these politicians now. I don't listen to what they say. Just occasionally I'll catch something, but for the most part I don't listen to what they say. I just go by what they do. You know, what are they doing? You know. Kat says, that's my opinion after reading their biographies. Your opinion is that they're not the same. Yeah, they're not the same at all. They're not even close. The Republican Party isn't even close to what it used to be. It used to be about, you know, lower taxes and free market and, you know, stuff like that. More morality, you know, faithfulness to your spouse, you know, all these different things. That's what the Republican Party used to be. And now it's complete opposite, you know. An anti-drug, you know, yeah, not you know, no pot smoking or anything like that. And now it's completely opposite on all that stuff. And the abortion issue has always just been, you know, the position of the Republicans have always been anti-abortion, but none of the politicians actually care about that. They just use that to try to get votes, you know, to try to get people to act against their own interests or whatever. So yeah, I haven't been listening to anything that he has said about that at all. You know, I know that he attacked with Israel, Iran. I know that they dropped a bunch of bombs. They killed the top leader, the supreme leader. Was it Ali Khamenei? They killed him and some other leaders. I don't think they killed the president. At least I haven't heard anything like that. But as of yet, Congress has not given permission to do any of that. It's just, Trump just did it completely on his own, which is absolutely against the Constitution. You know, it's not, there's no gray area or anything on this one, you know, war powers and all that. It's very much, Congress is the only one that can decide to bring the country to war, not the president. So it's a complete violation of the Constitution. If you look in the Constitution, it says that the president is the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy and the militia when called into actual service, and the ones who regulate the ones with the power to regulate the military and the ones who call the military into service and to declare war, all that power is Congress. The president is just like Congress says do this thing, and then the president's supposed to do it. That's how it's supposed to work. That's what if you read the Constitution, that's what it says. Article 1, Section 8 says Congress has the power to declare war, and it also says that Congress has the power to regulate the armed forces and to supply them and to fund them and everything else. And Congress has not said any of those things. And when he first, like, what was it, late January, I think it was, is when he first announced that he was sending aircraft carriers and all this stuff over to Iran, and said, we're coming over there, we're going to pressure Iran or attack them or whatever he was going to do. And Congress sat on their hands. They didn't do anything. Right? And any senator, anybody in Congress could have, at that moment when he first did that, they could have introduced an AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force. And if they had done that, back in late January, early February, then it could have come to a vote, and they would have to get 60 senators to vote for that. And if they didn't, and they didn't pass it, then it would be very clear that Trump did not have authority to do that. And I mean, it is very clear, right? He doesn't have authority. They didn't pass anything like that. They could have if they wanted to. And if Congress wanted him to do that, then they could have done that. But they didn't. And the weird thing about it is all these senators and all these Congress people who are complaining about Trump doing this, they've done nothing to stop him. Nothing. Zero. Any one of them, where's Bernie Sanders? Where was Bernie Sanders back in January or early February? Why didn't he introduce an AUMF at that time and say, here's an AUMF, Trump is authorized to go and attack Iran and change the regime, and we can put troops in there, whatever it is, Here's the AUMF, and put it in front of the Senate and have them vote on it. If they had done that, if Bernie Sanders had done that in late February or late January, early February, then it would have been voted on, and it wouldn't have passed. Because it would be filibustered, and then in order to get cloture, they'd have to get 60 votes in Senate. They wouldn't get that. because they don't have 60 Republicans or even Republicans plus enough Democrats to do that. So I think all these members of Congress and senators who are acting like they don't want war, they really do want it, and they're just pretending, because otherwise they would do something to stop it. And so what they did instead is they waited for Trump to actually attack Iran, and then they come up with a resolution that says we're to stop. That's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to go. The way it's supposed to go is it starts in Congress. Congress says yes, go to war, and gives permission to the president to go to war, and then the president can go to war, or the president can say, Congress, hey, I want to go to, we got a thing here. I got to go to war with this country. Congress, give me permission to do this, and then Congress votes on it and gives permission to the president to go to war. That's how the Constitution says. That's how the law says, if they're going to follow the law. Instead, the president just on his own starts a war, which is against the law, kills some people, which is homicide, that's murder. And then Congress says, oh, let's vote to stop him now that he started it, And to do that, in order to vote to stop him, then they need to get 60 votes to stop him, right? When that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be they've got to get 60 votes in the Senate to allow him to go to war. So it's just all screwed up. Let's see. Let's see. We got Silver Pills is saying. Was responding to Saggy. Trump was an actor. Okay, Home Alone 2, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know what you're saying there, Silver Pills. Let me see here. You say Home Alone 2 and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Are those two things that Trump was in? I'm not sure what that is. I think I remember somebody saying that who's in Home Alone 2. Yes, okay. But I think he appeared like as himself, right? I think he's like, it's like a cameo. I think that's what it is, right? It's not like he's an actor playing a character. I think he's playing himself in those things, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, the whole thing here is that Iran hasn't done anything to the U.S. Since the revolution and they took the hostages and then the hostages were released, Iran has not directly attacked the U.S. I asked AI, I did a bunch of research for going back this whole century. There hasn't been a single time that Iran has attacked the U.S. without provocation. The only time they attack the U.S. or attack U.S. bases or troops or anything is in response to the U.S. attacking them. When Trump assassinated their military guy, their head general or whatever he was, then they shot some missiles at our base, and didn't kill anybody. They just shot missiles at the base just to retaliate, and that was it. And then when Trump bombed their nuclear facilities, what was it, June, July last year? Then after that, then they shot off some missiles at some of our bases there. and injured some of our troops, but didn't kill anybody that I remember, if I'm remembering it correctly. So they haven't directly attacked the U.S. without provocation for this whole century. So what, you know, and everybody's saying, well, why, well, we got to attack Iran because they're always attacking us, you know. No, they don't attack us, you know. They're you know, and they're not much worse of, you know, their democracy is not much worse than the U.S.'s right now, you know. It functions very similar to the way our system functions now. Not, you know, we're not following the Constitution anymore. A lot of our laws are being made up by the Supreme Court and the president, and that's not legal. That's not representative, right? The president is elected by the people. The president is elected by electors. Very often, the president doesn't get popular majority. The Supreme Court isn't elected by people, and they're making up laws. So it's very similar, a lot of it. And then when you look at the actual effectiveness, you know, the litmus test of a democracy is, you know, is the government doing what the people want, you know? And they're not at all, you know. All the stuff that the people want, the Congress and the government is not doing. They don't do the things that the people want. So, and then you know, when Iran responds to an attack from the U.S., it's proportional, you know. They respond in kind. So I don't know, I haven't watched the news here lately, but I know there was an attack in Austin. There was some sort of terrorist attack. I don't know what the details are on that, but you know, we assassinated their leader. So what are they going to do, right? If they respond in kind, right? You know. So I don't think Trump's going to finish out his term, and I think Iran will respond in kind. And even if they don't, you know, somebody else, Putin or somebody else, could do it and blame Iran, you know. So I don't know, it's all messed up. And even when Trump's gone, you know, we still got this screwed up system. It's you know, where Congress just gives all their power away to the president and the Supreme Court. And it's not supposed to be like that. And for some reason, even though things are totally screwed up and Congress isn't doing what people want, and they're doing all these evil things, and they're totally corrupt, and they're, you know, robbing the Treasury, and, you know, and doing all this terrible stuff, people keep voting incumbents back in. That's the part that I don't understand. How can somebody vote for an incumbent at this point? That makes no sense at all. You know, people they're like, I don't know. Maybe they're thinking that's, oh, I got to vote for my team. You know, whatever. If they're an R or a D, that's what they got to do. I don't know what they're thinking. Why they keep voting back in incumbents that are doing these horrible things, you know, and are so corrupt and all this kind of stuff. It's beyond my understanding. It makes me wonder about if the elections are really, if they're really doing it right, you know. How can it be that incumbents are getting like in my own case here? I'm in the 2nd district of New Hampshire for the congressperson. So the incumbent is Maggie Goodlander, I think is her name. And she's got 66%. in the primaries of in the polls, you know, which are probably made up. I don't know, but how could you know, an incumbent possibly have 66% of people saying, "Oh yeah, this is okay. Yeah, we like that you're, you know, that you're letting the president do all these illegal things and start wars and try to start a war with Canada. You know, oh, that's just fine. Yeah, you know, why would people reelect? You know, support that? It's just beyond me. I don't understand it. I don't understand how an incumbent could possibly get reelected in this environment. It's just beyond me. So, and what the war is really about, that's one of the things. Oh, Silverpill says, I'm running in 28. I'll fix everything, I promise. Yeah. Well, I don't look at the promise. You got, you know, you can't, right? You can't believe what whoever the person says. You can't believe what they're going to do. They're saying what they're going to do. But you can believe what the person who is in there right now has done, right? That's the fact. Right? There's no promise. No, you look at the legislation they passed or didn't pass, and the power that they've given the president, and the, you know, all that. You can look at what they've done to screw up the country, and say, I don't want that person. I'm going to vote for the other one, whoever the other one is. You know, vote for them. And if the other person is just completely untenable, then vote for the third one, you know, or whatever. You know, vote for the independent or whatever. But God, don't vote for the incumbent. How could you possibly vote for an incumbent? I just don't understand that at all. So the reason why we're going, why, yeah, so that's the question, right? Why would Trump attack Iran, right? What's the reason for it? It's not to get the weapons of mass destruction, right? We know that tune, right? That's not what it's about. It's not the nuclear facilities. It's not, you know, they're not attacking us. They're not all this stuff. But what they are doing is they're selling a lot of oil. Their oil production has gone up and up and up and up. And right before the attack, they put a whole bunch of oil on the market. And what happens, they're part of OPEC. And OPEC, you know, tries to get all their members, you know, who are the biggest oil producers and sellers, most of them, to control the amount of oil that they're putting on the market so that the price will be higher, right? They sell oil. They want to get as much money for their oil as possible. They want high oil prices. And occasionally they'll cause the price to go down for strategic reasons. Maybe they want to get a politician elected somewhere, so they want oil prices to be down, so the gas prices go down, so their guy gets reelected. Or maybe they want to drop prices, you know, suddenly and quickly at a strategic time in order to have their competitors go out of business, competitors that can't compete, you know, because the price would be too low, whatever. But they want to control the oil, you know, how much oil is going on the market, and over time get as much money for their oil as possible. And this same situation came back why we went into Iraq, right? We had 9/11. The Saudis attacked us on 9/11, right? Osama bin Laden, he's the son of a wealthy Saudi man who's connected to the royal family in Saudi Arabia. He did an attack with a whole bunch of Saudi nationals who got on planes, attacked us on 9/11. And so what do? We retaliated against Saudi Arabia, right? No. No, we went into Afghanistan, where they got nothing. They got a ton of big, huge oil reserves, and that's it. They're not even pumping the oil out. But we went in there to make sure that they would not pump that oil out. And then we went into Iraq. Iran, Iraq rather. And why did we go into Iraq? Because Saddam Hussein was putting oil on the market more than the Saudis wanted him to, and more than the American oil companies and Russian companies wanted them to. So we attacked Iraq rather, and got rid of Saddam Hussein. And the first thing we did when we attacked them was to take out their oil fields, and that's what. And now that we're the same thing over and over again, right? Iran was selling a bunch of oil, 2 million barrels a day, more than 2 million a day, and a lot more right before the attack. And so the first thing they do is they go in there and start taking out their oil fields and taking out their ability to produce oil and block the Strait of Hormuz to keep oil from flowing through there. And then what happens? Exactly what they wanted to happen. Exactly what Trump and the Saudis wanted to happen. Oil prices shot up. Gas prices went up, and now they're making a ton of money. They're making lots and lots of money, and all the U.S. oil companies that back Trump, and the Saudis who Trump got billions of dollars in bribes from, are making a lot of money, and Trump's buddy Putin is making tons of money because of the oil prices went up. Let's see. Silver Pill says he was trying to get off the dollar market, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to do. It doesn't matter what's. I mean, we like it to be the dollar, but it's just supply and demand. It's just pure market stuff, right? It's the more oil on the market, the lower the price is going to be, and the less there is, the higher the price will be. And then on the demand side is the same thing, and that's another reason why they want to control the price. Is they don't actually want the price to go too high, because when the price went over $100 a barrel, way over $100 a barrel after the Iraq invasion, they started having what was called demand destruction, and that's what got the whole electric car thing going. That's when all the electric car development started. 2003, we went in there, attacked them. The price of gas went way up, and that's when Detroit couldn't sell their cars. They were selling all these big expensive gas guzzlers up until then. And Detroit couldn't sell their cars, and they said, "Hey, this is costing us billions of dollars. We're not going to let this happen again." And so they fast-tracked electric cars, and that's when electric cars started hitting the market. When was the Leaf came out and went with 2010 or something like that, or I forget when it was. Let me look that up. I want to know when that was, because I forget that. Nissan Leaf. Let's see, am I doing that right? Yeah. Let's see here. 2010. Okay. 2010 is when they first started doing it. So it took them 7 years from the time we invaded. So say 6 years from the time the gas prices shot up. They said, "Forget you, we're going electric," and so that was it was unveiled in 2009. So yeah, it didn't take them too long, once they decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. So, and so the oil company call that demand destruction. It's when the price of gas or oil gets so high that the the people who use the oil, right, which is mostly transportation, cars, but also heating and everything else, people start switching to different types of energy, So they want to control the price. They want to get the price high enough that they make a lot of money, but they don't want it to stay high, very high for very long, because then that causes people to switch, and has more incentive to get people to switch to other energy sources. Silver Pill says, that's why we went after Saddam, I thought. They didn't want him to take oil off the dollar market. I'm not 100% on that. Yeah, I don't know. They just want to control it, how much is being shipped. I don't, there's a forex market, right? Money is fungible, right? People can just, if it's in some other it's not the dollar, but some other denomination. There's a market where you can just easily switch from one denomination to another. So I don't think that's the main. I think it's just pure market. They just, Saddam Hussein. They had sanctions in place against Saddam, so he wouldn't be able to sell as much oil. But they had a humanitarian exemption or whatever, where you could sell oil to get drugs or medical supplies or something. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he was still selling a ton of oil, getting around the sanctions and selling oil. And they didn't like that because it was lowering the price of oil, when he did that. Venezuela, same thing, right? They want to control. Venezuela has what is it, the second or third largest reserves of oil or something like that? Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, in terms of companies that are producing oil, and Iraq. Afghanistan has huge oil reserves, but the U.S. and Russia take turns going into Afghanistan, fucking them up so they can't get their oil out. They can't get produced. It gets unstable enough that oil companies don't want to go in there and invest a bunch of money to build the infrastructure to do that because it's too unstable. But they have a huge amount of oil there. And the thing that's so sick about all this is that, a couple of decades from now, oil is going to be irrelevant. The world is switching over because of global warming, because of climate change. The world is switching over to solar and wind and other ways of getting energy. So it's really sad, It's and of course this would have all come out, right? If they would have, back in January, early February, if they would have introduced the an AUMF at that time, then they would have actually, in Congress, they would have openly discussed all this stuff. They would, they would say, okay, Trump, why do you want to go in there? And he'd say, weapons of mass destruction, and they'd say, well, where's your, where's your, show us the sauce, where's your stuff, at least when they went into Iraq, they had some fake photos they put up, and said, oh, here's this weapon of mass destruction, blah, blah, Trump's too incompetent to even pull that off, right? He couldn't even do that. So it would be very clear what was going on. That the reason that he was going into Iraq is because, the Saudis bribed him, billions of dollars, and Israel's paying off every politician in D.C. It had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction or terrorism or anything else, or nuclear, development or anything. And that's really, the Iran. I did a whole stream on this about the whole nuclear program in Iran. You can look it up. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. But they really are not trying to develop weapons grade, to refine weapons grade uranium. They get it up to what is it, 10% or 12% or whatever it is, and I think it needs to be 20 or 25% to make a fissile type nuclear bomb. That would kind of halfway work. So they're way below that, and they use it for to produce power and to do research and medical stuff and things like that. And when they do make nuclear power, then that's energy that they don't have to use oil for, and they can export more oil when they do that, right? So that's another reason why they don't like the nuclear program, is because it competes with oil. The whole thing is all about that, and the whole oil industry is very much, when the oil industry was first getting started, and for its whole history, the oil is often in places where there's instability to begin with, and then because of the the resource curse or whatever, there's going to be, they have to have security, right? They have to, when they're pulling the oil out of the ground, the oil companies have to kind of provide their own security, and they've kind of developed this whole parallel industry along with the oil part of it. There's a whole services industry where they got rent a army, type of thing, and so they have a lot of capability in that respect too. So and in arms, right? The arms people who in the defense industry, the people who build all the bombs and all that kind of stuff, they make a ton of money when this happens too. So it's really sick. Silver Pill says, I hope so, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not sure which comment that was in reference to. Yeah, it's kind of hard. I don't keep up with chat contemporaneously, right as soon as you say stuff. So it's kind of hard for me to remember what you were responding to there. When I type stuff into chat, I always try to type in, at the beginning, I'll say regarding such and such, and then make my comment, and then the streamer will know what I'm talking about. That we switch off fossil fuel. Yeah, we're getting there. It's just of course it would be done a long time ago, right? We'd be switched over right already. We'd be on fusion, right, by now. But the oil industry, fossil fuel industry, is very much sabotaging. Every chance they get, they try to sabotage alternative energies. Solar is kind of hard for them to sabotage, right? That's technology that's been around a long time, and it's just what they do. What they do in that one is they get into local governments and get them to pass laws to prevent, people from putting up solar. For a long time here in New Hampshire, they had really strict rules about how much. We're supposed to be New Hampshire's supposed to be the state that's live free or die, right? We're all about freedom. People do what you want. But you try to put a solar panel up and they say, nope, can't do it. It's against the rules, blah, 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 or a windmill, a wind turbine or something. They're because they, this state is very much in the pockets of the oil industry. So we had a thing, what was it, almost 20 years ago almost. They wanted to run a power line from Canada up where they have this hydropower up in Canada that Canada couldn't use. They had a ton of power up there. And down in Massachusetts, right, they got a lot of people, a lot of industries, a lot of stuff going on down in Massachusetts. They need the power. So they said, okay, well, we want to run a transmission line through New Hampshire to take that hydro from Canada and run it down, to Massachusetts and Boston or whatever. And there was the oil company just really brought out their hacks, and they just really went against that, and they didn't do it. They didn't build that infrastructure, that electric infrastructure. Now our power bills are double, triple, what they used to be, because they did that, and it makes it harder for people to use alternate energy then because of that. And they do this every little thing, appliances, every little thing. They try to get in there and change the law or do the thing, like the fuel efficiency standards in cars, and they fight tooth and nail every single time they get their guys in there to fight all that stuff, and try so that people have to use fossil fuels. If that industry pressure, if all that sabotage from the oil industry was not going on, we would have switched over long time ago. Fusion would have happened. We would have had, we'd be all electric. We'd be an electric society right now, So, how long have I been out here? Oh, almost 3 hours. Yeah. What else was I going to talk about here? So we talked about Iran, I think. I think we covered all the stuff on that. Did my drinking bird, talked about the astronauts in space. Let me see if there's anything else here on these tabs I had open here. Let's see. We had talked about the women and astronauts. Human health during space travel, state of the art. Okay, I don't know what that was about. I don't think I wanted to talk about that anyway. And we have astronauts having sex in space, and a psychological part of that. I think I mentioned that. We had astronauts jacking off in space. We got let's talk about sex in space again. Another one. Okay. All right. I think I got all these. Covered them all. All right. Let me, I gotta run my other thing here now. Okay, these are my credits that I do. At the end of my stream, I always do my credits. So these are all my credits. That video that I played had the credits in the video itself, so you all saw that it was Creative Commons. And anything else that I happen to do, Wikipedia, all this stuff. I don't think I played much music here. I didn't do any Khan Academy, but I run all these credits here so you can see. Because we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to, when you use stuff, when you use different stuff, you're supposed to show the credits, that it. So let's see here. All right. So this is what it looks like. Can you see that? Is that out there now? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Recorded on March 8th, so that's right. It got the title right. These are all the tags that I used. These are my other stuff, my websites and social media. I don't use the social media, this Mastodon thing anymore, but I put it out there anyway. Fair use. Yeah, I think I had some fair use stuff in there. I just used it. Like there were a couple articles, and I just read excerpts from them, so that's fair use. In music. Khan Academy, Wikipedia. All right, that's it. All right, got it. All right, I think that's it. All right, everybody, thank you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for your questions. And if you're watching this on on a video somewhere. How the hell did you get to the end of this thing? You got amazing stamina to watch this whole stupid video. But thank you anyway for watching it. If you're that much into it, then please give me a follow or a subscribe or what do you know, all that shit. That's yeah, I guess that's it. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Bye.